Hi, I'm Sanju. I'm a researcher at IIT Delhi and I study the impact of information technology on decision making and behavior in society. And today I'm going to talk about ethics of information systems. In the last few decades, information technology is growing at a pace that has not been witnessed by humankind in our history. Um, Information has changed the most trivial of things for us. It has changed how we eat, how we sleep, how we wake up, how we uh, commute to our offices, how we work, how we talk to each other, how we shop, how we entertain. And if you've ever walked into a restaurant where you see four people sitting and scrolling their phones and not talking to each other, um, I believe that you agree that it is time we talk about the ethics of information system and how they are influencing and I would argue to some extent manipulating our behavior in society for economic profit. Uh, there is a certain fascination that is aroused by information technology with the prospects of artificial intelligence and machine learning and where it's going to take us. But I think it's time that we look at it from a different angle. We look at it from where all this technology fits in our goals, in our personal goals, in the goals of our society, and in our well-being. So this takes me to the question of what does ethics really mean? What would ethics mean for information technology, and how would we even arrive at it? Some would argue that it's too subjective. Some would argue that information should be free. Some people argue that there should be no censorship on the internet. They also cite examples of dictatorial censorships in various countries, and that's how they advocate that there should be no regulation on the internet. But I would like to bring a different perspective. I would like to bring the perspective of how is it that information really interacts with society. Um, and for this, I would like to give the analogy of another major technological change, which is the Industrial Revolution. So, the prime mover of the Industrial Revolution was machines. And when we regulated industries on the basis of how is it that machines really interact with people and culture. So, because human machine interaction is a physical interaction, it was likely and it used to happen that industries used to cause actual physical harm to people in the form of bad working conditions, in the form of unsafe design of machines, um, in the form of intense labor, in the form of poor working hours, and the model of industries itself was liable to call financial exploitation. So these ways in which that technology interacted with people defined the way in which policies surrounding industries were made. And now I argue that the same logic is likely to lead us to an ethical framework, and because human information interaction is not physical, it is cognitive. It is the study of this cognitive model of interaction that will take us to a model of ethics. And this cognitive interaction is essentially the neuroscientific study of information processing and decision making. The point that I would like to make is the nature of harm that is likely to be caused by information technology is cognitive. It comes from the models of the mind, it doesn't come from the models of the body. And therefore, it is the models of the mind that we need to study. And here, so let's talk about the human mind a little bit. Let's first understand how the mind really works, and then we'll see if it can be manipulated. Um, so when people first started studying decision making, they were economists, really, not psychologists. So when people started studying decision making, they actually based their models, their theories, their formulas of how people make decisions on a very, very peculiar assumption, which is the assumption of rationality. So economists assumed that people are rational, people are consistent with their preferences, they have defined preferences. People choose their preferences logically and they don't change them. And anybody sitting here can hear this sentence and understand that this is completely ridiculous because people are not rational. They are everything, but they're not rational. People are often indecisive. People often change their preferences. People often experience regret and they base their choices on emotion, not logic, all the time. So, in terms of decision making, we are not smart, and we all agree with that. But that's a very naive way of putting at it because decision making is not arbitrary. It actually results from the cognitive process that takes information from around the world, that takes information from our memory, and it evaluates it and reaches a certain conclusion. So the cognitive system is actually adapted for survival, so it can't be as stupid as I'm claiming it is. And this worldview was formalized by two people known as Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky, who discovered that even though people are irrational, they're very systematically irrational. They use quite logical shortcuts to arrive at decisions, to save them information processing power, to save them time, to save them energy. And they gave us these heuristics of decision making. Since then, this was the 1970s, and since then we've made significant progress in neuroscience, which has even further advanced our understanding that these heuristics are a result of certain processes. They are the result of the interaction between the information that we take from our senses, the information that we take from our memory, the emotional state of mind at that point in time, our motivations, and our attention processes. It also depends on where we are looking, and all of these in a very fuzzy manner is evaluated by the decision making neurons in the brain, and we arrive at a decision. So this interaction between these various very, very efficient modules is what leads us to a choice. Now, when we have an understanding of neuroscience, we also have an understanding, unfortunately, of how to manipulate the brain. And this is where information technology fits in. It fits in because it has the power to manipulate our cognitive processes, such as attention, such as memory, such as our motivations, such as our emotions, to slightly bias our decision in a certain direction in a way that benefits the system and probably not us. For example, if you're a person who works in an office and you often bring tiffin to the office, but when you wake up, you're getting a text from a food delivery service that there's a discount, and then you're on the highway and then you're seeing a banner ad of the same food delivery service, and then when you go to work and right before lunch you get an email in your inbox that there's a discount. Just due to the by virtue of the number of times that you've seen this ad, you are now more likely to formulate that order as an option for your lunch and use that service to get your lunch instead of taking it from a canteen that prepares healthy food in the cafeteria. And all the while you're actually feeling completely in control of your decision, which is funny because it is these subtle manipulations that has caused you to make this decision in a certain way, which you might not have made if you hadn't been served with these ads. And there's just one example of how tiny influences created by all the information systems surrounding you can lead you to make certain decisions. And this is where information system ethics fits in. This is where we need to build a framework of ethics to understand what human information interaction is ethical, what is not, and what is so bad that it shouldn't even be legal. And that is why I would like to argue for very, very reasonable policy and ethical control on information systems design. which serves business, which serves the economy, but which also serves our motives, our health, our happiness, our savings, and our well being.